Day 13. Whispers. The wind sent rippling waves through the long grass on the moorland, the sky pregnant and grey. It was late morning, but it could have been any time. The light diffused over an empty scene. Not an animal moved, and all the folk were at home, all save the children. George's wife was quiet, staring distantly into the fire. Her cheeks were streaked, her eyes puffy, exhausted from crying. She had simply fallen into a waking sleep. Their 2 children, John and Bess, had disappeared with all the others 3 days ago, without a trace. George saw the plate next to her on the earthen floor, a hunk of bread and cheese untouched. Even the 2 pickled onions were precisely where he had left them. He had given up on asking her to eat, to sleep, to see to her work, anything. He took his satchel and staff from behind the door and left the house. As his lordship's gamekeeper, George was known beyond the bounds of the little hamlet through which he walked now, and was well liked within them. On any normal day, he would stop to speak to his neighbours on his way to his rounds, even when he needed to leave before dawn or came back after dark. There was always someone around, tanning hides or moving cattle, stumbling home drunk or breaking up a fight. Children splashing in the puddles or helping their parents. But they were gone, and none of the parents came out to chat today. He strode out across the moor, glad for the fresh air. He imagined what he would say to Lord Hinckley when next they met. The others in the hamlet had begged him to ask for his lordship's help, and he had said he would try, but could promise nothing. Their lord was a good employer, always fair, but was never one to be drawn on the affairs or needs of the people who worked his land. George knew they were better off helping themselves. And they had certainly tried. All the local suspects had been rounded up at once and put into Derek the farmer's barn, and while some of the farm hands questioned them, the rest had dropped everything to scour the fields, the hidey holes and the well. George had led one group to stop at his various hides in the forest, which were known for numerous children's games, all to no avail. The hamlet had sunk into a sickening silence. Loved ones were helpless. George crossed the threshold into the woodland once more, following a path his grandfather first led him down all those winters ago. It was one of his earliest memories, and always emerged on this way to work. He couldn't remember where his father had been that day, but he still recalled the sense of dread he felt following his grandfather's hunched back, draped in a waxed brown cape, into the dark trees. His grandfather had been a cruel man. He reached the brook that led down to the first hide, so placed because the whispering water disguised any accidental sounds from whoever might be in there, and even confused the game's brilliant noses by churning up the air too. The brook was one of his favourite places. It always calmed him, and he felt that it always led him to what he needed, and he needed that today of all days. He needed those whispers. But today there were more. He brought himself to a stop gradually, as his father had taught him, his legs like giant springs, allowing him to make but not a sound. His mouth had fallen open instinctively, the hollow space like a bell which would catch and amplify any sound and allow him to hear the slightest movement. He relaxed his focus to take in the whole picture of the wood. Many would see simply trees, leaves, a path, but George knew every tree like a member of a congregation. The familiar complexity of this place unfurled before him, and he waited like a statue to see that which was not there before. Whispers. Children's whispers. He was struggling to hear anything other than his own excited breathing now. He calmed it, listened. It was really their voices. He prayed beyond anything that his John and little Bessie were here, that he was looking after his little sister. But his son was almost old enough to be out here working with George and already knew a lot. He would be a fine apprentice. Below? George's brow furrowed as he tried to pinpoint them, but yes, the whispers were coming from down on the forest floor. He swept his eyes over the various animal tracks that stood out like so many lengths of string at his feet. Rabbits, muntjac, thankfully no wolves in these parts for some years, a badger, a few badger lines in fact, and they converged a few paces away, disappearing behind a large oak root, the perfect place for a set. Stepping toe first, spreading his weight and making no sound, George made his way to the hole in the earth he had expected, in fact, remembered. He had pointed it out to John only a few weeks ago, reminding him of the danger of badgers, but that this family would be moving on soon. The hole was not large enough for a man, but for a child, certainly. As if she had heard this thought, a little girl's face appeared in the mouth of the hole, bright eyes shining through soil-smeared skin. She saw George, squealed, and disappeared in a flash. George stomped on the ground. His torso was swollen with rage, but when he heard how many screams came from underneath, he was immediately deflated. So suddenly, in fact, a bark of a laugh escaped. "John, may God save you if your sister isn't down there with you," bellowed George, "because I'll be of no use against your mother." A dirty crown poked up, followed by a head and shoulders, but it wasn't John, it was the farmer's boy. His shoulders, already broadening from the hayricks he moved, just about squeezed through, his squirming hips and arms wriggling him out. After a moment, the boy stood before George, squinting against the cloud as if it were a midsummer sun, his hands on his hips. "We're staying here," he said. "Is that right, young master? And who's this we of whom you speak?" asked George. "You know who," said the boy, quite sure that that was that. George allowed himself another laugh. "Well, I suppose I do," he conceded. "But pray, what on earth are you all doing, well, in the earth?" The boy puffed out his chest, a spokesman finally given his chance to speak. "We ain't going to work no more. We's young, and us young ain't supposed to work." George wasn't smiling anymore. "John, is that what's in your heart?" asked George. His intuition had been right, and John was just around the bend in the set. His round brown eyes, his mother's eyes, peeked out from the ground, and George felt his throat rise. John was clearly terrified. "I love the woods, Pa. I don't want them to be spoilt," he quavered. George knew exactly what he meant.